Good morning, everyone. I'm Sherry Bell, president of Camosun College, and I'd like to welcome you all to our virtual forum. I'd first like to start by acknowledging and recognizing the Lekwungen and Wisanish people whose traditional territory we're working and learning on today. I'm hoping, it's really hard to do this because you can see me, but I can't see you. I'm hoping that today is a valuable opportunity for you to have your questions answered, maybe some fears alleviated. And I want to thank you all for everything that you've done for the college and our students in the past few months. I know that this time has been incredibly difficult, both professionally and personally, for all of you. And I want to thank you for your patience, understanding, support, and resilience as we move through this COVID-19 pandemic together. I'd like to now introduce our fabulous board chair, Leigh Rouhani, who would like to start with a few words for you. Over to you, Leigh.
Great, thanks, Sherry, and hello to everybody watching. It's a real pleasure to be able to participate in today's virtual gathering. I've had the honor to serve on Camosun's Board of Governors since 2014. My family came to Canada from Iran to escape religious persecution as members of the Baha'i faith, who are still to this day not given the right to higher education. For this reason, being able to support an amazing educational institution like Camosun, which provides so many people with amazing opportunities, is meaningful to me. I would like to commend the hard work and incredible creativity of faculty and staff in continuing to support students, each other, and the community, especially once COVID-19 hit earlier this year. I'm incredibly proud to be a part of Camosun College, and I look forward to the discussion ahead. Thank you.
Jen, you're on mute.
Of course I am. Sorry about that, everyone. Just wanted to say thank you very much to Sherry and to Leigh for the introduction. I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Stone. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives, and I'm one of the producers and moderators of this morning's live gathering. Today's virtual college gathering is intended to give everyone an opportunity to ask the college executive questions about any topic, but particularly around Camosun's response to COVID-19. Thank you to those who submitted questions via the SurveyMonkey. We've compiled a number of those questions to kick things off, and after that we'll address questions asked in the chat function. My colleague Rodney Porter will be compiling those questions for members of the college executive to answer. So we've scheduled the virtual gathering for 1 hour. And depending on timing and how things go, if we don't get to all of the questions, we'll follow up with an FAQ. This event is also being recorded, so you can go back and watch it later or share with your colleagues who maybe couldn't attend today. So now we're going to move on to the first part of today's event with some questions, and I'm going to go to Sherry first. So it'll just take me a minute to put Sherry back on camera. Okay, Sherry. The first question this morning is around the financial health of the college and if there's any additional government funding coming our way.
Well, I'll take the first part of the question first. Financial health is something that all of us are incredibly worried about. Our board, our executive, and the college in general. I'm not surprised that was the #1 question that came through. We are looking at financial issues every single day. It's something that we have spent a lot of time looking at and modeling out. So we look at tuition. And so right now our registration is open, but we really don't know what our enrollment numbers are going to look like for the fall. So we have to look and model what would it look like if we were down 50% in international and 30% in domestic, or if it was 30% and 15%. So that's one piece of the modeling that we're doing. We also are looking at non-academic aspects of the college that typically would generate funds or would at least break even. and saying, okay, well, you know, with our food services or our parking, what could we anticipate in those areas? And so we're looking at models and shifting them as information comes to us. The second part of the question was around the Ministry of Advanced Education, Skills and Training. Both myself and Deborah Hilscher, our CFO, VP Admin, are talking to the ministry on a weekly basis. They're in the same position we're all in. They don't know what the scope of the landscape at post-secondary with 25 public institutions is going to look like. They have told us there is no extra money right now, that we need to be financially stable ourselves. They're looking at options for us, because right now we will have a deficit. There's just no question about that. And we're not allowed to run a deficit. So what would that mean? Will they provide some funding or allow us to run a deficit? We don't know. But what we do know is we continue to advocate and to have conversations with our ministry partners, and they have indicated to us that they will work with each individual institution as they see the outcome of the fall enrollment and registration.
Great, thank you very much, Sherry. The next question that came in from our survey was one of the main themes was a request for information about layoff possibilities and job security.
Right, and that's not surprising that was a really important. It's a really important question to ask, and it's one that this is about our people, and at Camosun we are about our people, and so no matter what we do, we want to move forward because there will be layoffs. There will be layoffs for in positions where there's little or no work, and it's how we go about doing that. And it's heartbreaking to think of the possibility of people losing positions. We will look at every possible strategy to ensure that those numbers are minimized. It definitely will be well under 50 people. But I can't also give out, I know there were some questions about who and what departments, and we can't give out that information because, of course, if you're an individual where this is affecting you, you need to know first. And so we've been meeting with our union colleagues every single Wednesday morning, and we have conversations with them, not just about layoffs, but about other things. And we will definitely be following each collective agreement because each one is different in the process that we take for layoffs. And that process is complicated. And I think I'm going to ask Barb Severn to come on the screen and just describe some of the things that we will be doing and are currently doing with the folks that may be affected. So over to you, Barb.
Good morning. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. As Sherry has already described, it's heartbreaking for all of the members of executive when we have to come to the point of considering layoffs. But I do want to assure people that we are compassionate, that we work very closely with our union executives as we're going through the process, and we do honor the provisions of the collective agreement. Typically what happens, and they do differ slightly between them, but generally the areas that they all have in common is that we first discuss it with the union executive, and then we have individual meetings with the people whose positions are subject to layoff. Those meetings, excuse me, are held with workplace leaders and union representative, as well as a representative from human resources. And then we go into a period that's called labor adjustment strategy, where we look for alternatives that could mitigate the number of layoffs that we finally end up with. So those would be things like alternate placement and redeployment and people who are willing to reduce to part-time. We look at all kinds of options that are available to us to provide solutions for those people whose positions are being eliminated, so that when it comes down to it, at the end of that labor adjustment strategy period, hopefully our numbers are significantly reduced. It's only then that we get to the actual formal layoff if we've been exhausted all of the options and we are unable to find solutions for people. As Sherry said, this is confidential information. Where you start out with in terms of who's identified may not be the ultimate person that's laid off. There are seniority provisions and things like that that apply. But we do and are very sincere in our efforts to try to find solutions wherever we can. Right now, I noticed that one of the questions referred to people already being laid off, and there has been no one laid off as a result of this process yet. But what might be triggering that question is that we do have regular recurring layoffs every year. Those are in certain areas of the college that typically routinely are laid off in sort of April, May, June because of the seasonal nature of the work. So I just wanted to be clear about that. Those happen regularly. People understand that, and there's a process that considers them as well. So I hope that's enough information. Certainly, I would suggest if you have specific questions to your own collective agreement provisions, you speak to your union representative or your workplace leader, and certainly HR is available to help the workplace leaders in explaining how the process works in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barb and Sherry, for that that question. So we had a number of questions around the Black Lives Matter movement and anti-racism and the college's response. So first I'm going to ask Leigh to respond and then Sherry.
Great, thank you. So yes, the recent horrific killing of George Floyd and other acts of brutality have given rise to necessary dialogue around systemic racism in really all levels of society, including at the individual level and at the institutional level. As a college, I believe that we have a responsibility to acknowledge and address our reality that Black people and Indigenous people face systemic racism. The Board of Governors has been incredibly supportive of the work of the college in this area, including, for example, unanimous support for the new indigenization policy. Black Lives Matter is an incredibly important movement, and when I was thinking about it this morning, the Lekwungen term of Natsamat came to my mind, which means, of course, unity or working together as one. It's an acknowledgement of our inherent unity as human beings, so that when a segment of our population is suffering and facing incredible injustice, that we all come together to face the reality, to have the uncomfortable conversations, and ultimately work towards establishing unity. So I'll leave my comments there and I'll turn it over to Sherry.
Thanks, Leigh.
Thank you. Thank you, Leigh. You know, I think I'm going to talk first about Black Lives Matter. The images and the actions that have been happening both south of our border for Black Americans and in Canada for Black Canadians is troubling, disturbing. There's an emotional reaction, I think, that we've all had. It's also layered with, because of Black Lives Matter, the movement with global hope that there will be systemic change, because that's what needs to happen. It's incredibly important for our college to have a stand on this as well. And I think, you know, right now I can't even see people. I'm just looking at a screen. These emotionally connected moments need to occur and are occurring. They're occurring whether it's virtually in a classroom or conversations in departments. I know that's happening. And it's important that we are taking a stand as well. That context is very current. When you think of anti-racism, as Leigh says, I truly believe our board and our college, through the actions that we've been taking, stand for anti-racism. That is important to all of us. And we've demonstrated that. The indigenization policy that was just passed by the board is a great example. But there's other examples too. When our board endorsed many years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago, Orange Shirt Day, we've got beautiful students from 70 different countries that attend school here. And we're so proud of that diverse nature. Our domestic students represent many different cultures and backgrounds as well. When you think about equity, diversity, and inclusion, the board passed a policy about 1.5 years ago to support the work around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we had Conversations Day that was focused on just that. We did a Conversations Day that brought 800 people together on indigenization. Anti-racism is not something we take lightly, and racism is not tolerated at Camosun. And I think it is a topic that we're never, ever going to stop being able to focus on collectively and individually as employees and as instructors with students. So for me, it's a really emotional topic that I think that in some cases we're doing a really solid job with, but we need to keep moving forward, always looking for the gaps, because there are gaps that we need to fill, and we will. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sherry. So now we have some questions for some other members of CET, and so we're going to start with Heather. First question is, what is the college doing to help students and employees transition to online learning?
Oh, thank you. That's a great question. So first, I just want to commend all the faculty and staff who have been working tirelessly to help support moving our curriculum and our services online. We had to respond very quickly, and we have more than met that challenge. Also want to give a really great shout out to the e-learning folks in Settle and then the entire Settle team. They have always been there to support the movement of curriculum to online and learning, but clearly what happened this March forced them to step up and utilize the tools. I mean, they have championed making sure that we had the right software, Kaltura, D2L, access to Teams. I'm probably forgetting one, Collaborate, to make sure that we had the right tools in place so that we can move our learning online and be really effective. So thrilled that we were able to continue to do that. And they've been able to increase the number of workshops and supports that they've got available for our faculty. In terms of the services, though, we have moved our services online, and there's been a lot of conversation about things we didn't think we could do online. We've suddenly been able to do online. So supporting our employees and our colleagues to be able to deliver their work in a remote platform, that I think we've done extremely well. One of the gaps we've identified, though, is that we've moved online, but where's the support for our students to make sure they understand what it means to learn online? And that's a bit of a conversation that we're still having, we're still working through. We have this assumption that, our young people coming out of high school, they're all technically savvy. They grew up with technology, and they probably can teach us how to deliver online curriculum and service. But we are finding that there are folks who just don't have access to it. One of the things we realized very quickly is many of our students don't have access to a computer. And so the library and IT quickly gathered all the laptops around the institution and came up with a lending program so that we get those materials to our students. We've chatted with folks within Learner Services about how do you then teach a student how to use D2L so that they can use their course and maximize the use of their course. So those are things that we're still needing to work out a little bit. The other area that I would mention is the RO's office has constant communications with our current students and our incoming students, and they've tweaked their messaging to make sure that students know that the learning environment is going to be a little bit different. Even our orientation communications that we generally send out a few weeks at the start of the semester, as well as the first few weeks of this semester. Even that messaging has been tailored to provide some information on how to be successful as an online learner. Our library staff had years ago developed some really great tools and tips that are available on the website. We've incorporated those and linked to those resources in our communication. There's more work to be done for sure, but I think we're well on our way, and I think we'll be ready to go for fall.
Thanks a lot, Heather. I'm just going to put Sherry back on the screen here for a moment for another comment.
Thank you, Jen. I was just made aware of something that at the very beginning of our time together, when I was welcoming people, I did the traditional territorial acknowledgement, and that wasn't heard by people that are listening. So I'm going to do it again because it was, I guess it must have started after I started speaking. So welcome everyone. And if you're just joining us, you've missed a little bit of time, but I'd like to sincerely recognize and acknowledge the Lekwungen and Wasanich people whose traditional territories we're meeting and learning and living on today. And I'm very happy that in this beautiful day that we have today, that we can come together to share information and hopefully alleviate some anxiety and pressure that you're feeling. So if you didn't get it, you've got my welcome and the acknowledgement now. Thanks.
Great, thanks a lot, Sherry. All right, my next question is for Jeff Wilmshurst. Will on-campus childcare facilities be open for employees and students?
So thanks, Jen. That's a really good question. First of all, I just want to do a shout out to all of our people in partnerships who've done just a fabulous job under extremely difficult circumstances. Everyone's been working so hard, and I know that everyone is concerned about the work areas that they're in, and I certainly appreciate all of the efforts people are making. So with regard to our childcare facilities, we're looking at all of our options right now. We haven't made any final decisions, but we are going to be making decisions soon in terms of starting childcare in September.
Is everybody like that?
No. One of the main considerations that we're looking at is, of course, the health and safety of both children and employees. And within our COVID times, that's a very complex thing. It's there's a lot of cleaning protocols that are going to be needed to be put in place. And so Lisa Stecklenburg and her team have been doing a lot of work on that and looking at ways that we can do this safely. And we're obviously going to have to make sure that we have enough staff and that the facilities that we have will be able to accommodate the physical changes that we're going to need to make the childcare centers usable.
Great, thanks so much, Jeff. My next question is for Deborah, and I think this really speaks to the thoughtfulness of the people in our Camosun community. What is Camosun doing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from our buildings amid the climate emergency? Go ahead, Deborah.
Great, thanks, Jen. Climate change certainly is one of the greatest challenges we face as a society, and the COVID difficulties that we're facing right now haven't changed that at all. You know, it's still front and center. We hear loud and clear from our students and employees that the college has a role to play, and we agree, and we remain committed to doing that. Sustainability for the environment and society is a cornerpost in our current strategic plan. And in 2018, the college community developed a 3-year sustainability plan to help us provide the leadership on the key social, environmental, and economic issues that are impacting the college. So we're in the middle of that plan. Within that plan, we've identified a long-term goal to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions to 80% below the level they were in 2007. and we continue to work incrementally every year towards that long-term goal. Ultimately, the goal is that our students are a positive change in their community and the world, and we remain committed to working towards that goal.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Now, on to Mr. John Boris. Why are regular classes not being allowed to come to campus, even in small groups, once or twice a term?
Thanks very much, Jen. I was just framing in my mind that I hadn't received a question, which meant that I was doing such a good job that everyone knew exactly what I was doing. So we blew that. It's strange to be staring into a screen knowing that all of our colleagues are on the other side. So please know you're missed. And as I answer the question, it's just making that absence even more clear. You know, we've really struggled with, certainly for me, but among executive, in groups of faculty with deans, over the idea of who comes back to campus and who does not. And it really is that balance between recognizing that the magic that Camosun creates on campus in face-to-face groups and the relationship between faculty, staff, and students is a huge part of why we all have chosen to work here. So that's a huge value. Balanced with that are the words of our health authority and Bonnie Henry, and what we read, which identifies that our responsibility is to help keep us at a distance as much as possible, as part of the commitment to keeping interactions. You know, I think it was yesterday, Bonnie Henry identified sort of the 70% of normal interactions occurring across the community being that level which keeps us from moving into another spike of numbers. We in post-secondary have been asked to be a player in being sure that we contribute to keeping our communities safe, not being part of those larger gatherings. So that's the reason. It's really, can we manage to do things online? We've had those conversations, and where it's at all possible, the answer without joy is we need to stay off campus. But there also are some cases where we've discovered some really innovative, exciting ways where teachers have managed to create ways of connecting with their students online that are remarkable. And so out of this challenge, we found other ways to create the relationships that all of us are eager to rekindle. So as always, I think the Camosun community has managed to take this challenge and for the most part find ways to recreate that environment that we all long for. So thanks for the question.
Thank you so much, John. My next question is for Barb Severn. What support is the college offering for employees working remotely?
Thank you, Jen. That's a really good question. I think when we first started to work remotely, it was a quick switch and everybody kind of did what had to be done. But as the days stretched out, we started to look at how do we support people who are working from home. And we've set up actually kind of systems or requests, I guess you could say, for various equipment. That would include laptops and desktops and monitors and keyboards, all of that kind of equipment, including footrests and anti-fatigue mats. We also have allowed people to take home their chairs, particularly where they're ones that provide additional support. And if they have had a, what are they called, adjustable desktop, that allows them to stand sit. We've also set up a system where they can sign those out. So in terms of equipment, We've got a system for tracking that and loaning those for people to be able to take them home. And then in terms of all of the supplies that support their working from home, they're available in the typical way. People are welcome to get them through the office, but they also can get them through Monks or outlets of their choices for the supplies that are necessary for them to be able to work effectively at home. Beyond that, though, we've got tips for working at home for how people can stay engaged, connected, both for the employees themselves that are working from home and their workplace leaders to try to keep them connected to maintain that sense of community that is so special to the college. So we're trying to respond on all the various levels in ways that support people in working remotely, and we're very grateful for the willingness and resilience that people have shown in adapting to this, because we're social beings, and it's difficult and challenging for people to do this, and it's been quite remarkable the way people have responded. So thank you, Jen.
Yeah, thank you, Barb. And I have another follow-up question along the same vein for you. Okay. Is working from home likely to become standard post-COVID-19?
Oh, goodness. That's a good question. But I guess what I can say is, for now, our focus continues to be on having people work from home in as much as they can in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the direction of the provincial health officer and the government. We're dealing with the immediate and sort of intermediate term and haven't really turned our minds to the longer term yet. So that has to be our focus for now. That's right. Kind of a non-answer, but we're not thinking about it in the longer term at this point.
Okay, thanks so much, Barb. So just thank you again to everyone who submitted their questions online through the SurveyMonkey. And if we weren't able to answer the question during the live event, then again, we're going to be creating those FAQs to try and answer most of those questions. So that's the end of the first segment. We're going to be moving on to the next segment now. And my colleague Rodney Porter and a few members from his team have been monitoring the chat so far for this event, and they'll be posing a number of questions to various members of CET. So I'm going to pass the mic and screen over to Rodney Porter. Thank you so much.
Hi, thanks, Jen. My name is Rodney Porter. I'm the Executive Director of Communications and Marketing. We've got a lot of chat going on in the windows, 24 comments and questions. We probably won't be able to get to all the questions today, and if we don't, we will be following up with an FAQ. And if you feel your question wasn't answered, let me know. So kicking right off, we've been asked, will there be more opportunities for in-person, over-the-counter meetings on campus? Sherry, how do you want to handle that?
I think for this next segment, questions can be posed to me. This is the hot seat, actually. All the questions and comments are coming in, and Rodney's going to pass them my way, and I'll either answer them or I'll offer one of the CET members an opportunity to chime in as well. So over-the-counter options, I'm assuming that could mean the registrar's office or the library. So in that case, I think if that's what we're talking about, I'll pass it over to Heather Cummings for her comments.
Hi, thank you. So in the short term, we are not offering any in-person service. We've been able to successfully move pretty much all of us.
I'm still live. Can you move it to Heather?
Oh, sorry. Now I'm live. So at the current moment in the short term, and I would say that's the rest of the summer, we're not going to be offering any in-person service. That is to support our college as we put our focus toward identifying which are going to return online in the fall. We have and there's also a collection of services that are provided there that we feel can only be delivered in person, and so we are looking at out the library during the fall semester. Again, we haven't figured out the details of that. But at that time, that's the only service. Everybody's been told we're going to stay remote for the time being until we've got a process to be able to identify which services that we can bring on campus in a safe way. And we're just not there yet with that process.
Thanks, Heather. A lot of questions coming up around anti-racism, Black Lives Matter. For example, has the board and the college budgeted for any annual anti-racism training? What kind of educational opportunities could people expect to see in the upcoming year?
Thanks, Rodney. I'll talk to that. The board and the executive haven't had the opportunity to sit down and talk about possible opportunities coming up in the future. But that is something that we will be talking about. Of course, we're doing everything virtually right now, and we're talking a lot about budget. Budget is something that I addressed at the beginning with our financial health right now. So it is something that we will be talking about in the future. What we have been doing, and I'm talking specifically to Black Lives Matters, anti-racism and the other work that we have been doing around equity, diversity, and inclusion, we're continuing that work that stemmed from that policy. So the policy, which was endorsed by the board, we had a conversation today to look at it. Now a lot of the policy work is coming out that would kind of connect to that initial overriding policy of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And a good example is, looking at students with disabilities, accommodation policies. There's a lot of policy work that's being done. And although policy sounds like it's just it's paper, it's actually action. It's very action-based. There's some background noise. I'm not sure what it is, so that's what we are doing and have been continuing to do. Specifically around Black Lives Matters, that we will be talking to the board and the college in the future.
Another question is around online learning and studying. Who's teaching students to learn online? Also, who is teaching faculty to teach online? Do you want to split those, or?
I think, yeah, we can start with Heather and maybe go to John on those two questions.
Hi, so in terms of our faculty, that is where our e-learning folks have been superstars. Not only do we have the folks that can provide guidance on the technical use of some of the platforms like Collaborate, D2L, Kaltura, but then we've also got our instructional designers that are providing a lot of consultation support and saying, this is the curriculum, here's what we've generally done, how can we then teach this curriculum in an online forum? So those folks they've been offering workshops, one-on-one sessions. It's really just a matter of reaching out to those folks. The other thing I know is that within all of our schools, there are some champions, people who have already successfully, people know who they are, and I'm sure that they are willing and able to share with their colleagues any insights and guidance on how they can improve their course for the online environment. And in terms of our students, that's something as I said before, is a little bit of a gap and we have to work on. So if you're a student with a disability, we have our accessibility instructors who can help a student in terms of understanding technologies. We have our learning services folks who can provide a little bit of support, but as sort of a comprehensive, intentional program on making sure students understand the technologies we're using, that's where we've got a little bit of a gap. One would hope that there would be a little bit of explanation at the start of a course on what's going to be used and how to do it, but I think it'll take a village, and I think we need to just put a little bit more intentional thought into what this can look like as we prepare for fall.
And John, we're just turning the camera over to you to talk about who's teaching faculty to teach online.
Thanks, Rodney. You know, it's one of the conversations that has been front of mind since we began in a flurry to move online in the winter semester. And it keeps compounding as we enter the summer semester and the different teaching spring and summer within the summer semester and moving on to fall. Heather talked about the role of Settle and the e-learning staff, and we've certainly added additional capacity there to help support faculty. Heather mentioned some of the champions that exist within each school, and I certainly would agree that there's a huge amount of support that's emerging between faculty from Settle, and then also people learning and understanding things better each time they do it. I'm watching incredibly important work developing where, for example, science faculty and arts and science are moving labs online. I'm seeing a lot of efforts to transition support staff resources to help create videos and support materials for faculty. I think the notion of a village is actually a very important one in this context, because I would be absolutely insincere if I suggested that this was a slam dunk. Every time we're making this kind of change, there's incredible work that has to go into it. Hopefully everyone has felt that there's also incredible support available as they move into an incredibly anxious time often. So I believe we've done well at doing what's possible, but I don't want to at all diminish the fact that it's still just hard work and an anxiety producing process that we are making our way through, and my appreciation to not only the people who are actually delivering the courses, but I've had conversations with students who express anxiety, but who've actually come through this process so far very well. And then the support people across the institution who've helped as well, be it ITS, facilities in helping to change the structure of spaces. All of those people are putting together their efforts together to make this work, but it's still a lot of hard work. Thanks very much for the question.
Okay, our next question, Sherry, it's international students, so we'll go to Jeff. Do offshore international students taking Camosun courses, do they pay full tuition? And also, do they have Canadian student visas?
So on the tuition question, yes, they'll continue to pay full tuition, but we have adjusted the tuition slightly so that in the past we charged a flat fee for anyone taking 3 courses or above, and now we've adjusted that so that our international students can actually pay on a course-by-course basis, which will make it, I think, much more affordable for many of them. So, and I think it'll be easier as well for quite a few of our international students to probably, in these times where a lot of our courses are going to be online, it will be easier if they're taking a smaller number of courses. So I think that there will be quite an incentive for students to take up that part. With regard to the visa, that's a little bit complicated. Students who are offshore, so those students who are continuing to be at home in their home countries, can actually take our online courses and not have a study permit for Canada. But we are encouraging our international students to, in fact, apply for study permits now or when they're able. I must say that a lot of our immigration facilities overseas have been working at less than capacity, and so it's been very difficult to get a study permit currently. But where it is possible, we'd like our international students to, in fact, get a study permit so that if they are able to travel and come to Canada at some time, either later in the fall or winter semester, that they would be able to do that easily and not have to make an application at the last minute. So those students who are here in country, and you may be interested to know that almost 1,500 of our international students remained in the South Vancouver Island area when the pandemic began. And so we've had significant numbers of our international students actually registered for courses over the summer, and we're looking at pretty reasonable numbers for the fall. And a lot of that is buoyed by the fact that a lot of our students in fact stayed. And those students will need a study permit and are able to get a study permit while they're in country.
Thanks, Jeff. Sherry, I think this is probably the shortest question. Why is there a deficit?
Why is there a deficit? We're looking at an anticipated deficit. So there's no deficit per se at the moment. As Jeff just said, we do have a number, 1,500 of our international students remain. We're hoping that they're all going to come back to Camosun in the fall. We typically would have somewhere between around 2,000 students that would come to Camosun over the year from other countries. We also don't know our domestic enrollment right now, so we're anticipating a deficit based on assumptions, and so that's how we actually create the modeling for our budget is on assumptions. And you know, our assumption is based on knowledge. So the fact that we have 1,500 students here, we're not going to assume that we'll lose all of our international students. Domestic students, they come from the South Island, and we'll have to assume that the students that are registered are going to be returning. We don't know about new students coming in yet, and so those assumptions will change the more knowledge we receive. Other areas, as I explained, that typically would generate funds for the college aren't generating funds right now. In fact, they're losing funds. And so with those assumptions, we create budget models. And right now, we're meeting with our board executive quite frequently. As soon as anything changes, we meet with the board executive to fill them in on how things are shifting. And they will continue to shift. So we do anticipate a deficit. The number, we're not sure the specific number right now.
Thanks, Sherry. Another question. I'm trying to go through the questions in the order they're got to on that basis. One of the questions was, with a lot of people working from home, how are ergonomic needs being met? In some instances, equipment cannot simply be brought home, or else it wouldn't necessarily fit in people's homes.
I think Barb tried to address that a few moments ago. So I'm going to pass it over to Barb to see if there's anything else that she'd like to add to answer that specific question.
Thank you very much, Sherry. I think what I would suggest is, if there are pieces of equipment that you require specifically for some medical reason or accommodation, that you talk to your workplace leaders, because we'll look at those individual circumstances and try to meet the needs such that people can work in a way that is ergonomically supportive and safe for them in their homes. We have a self-assessment, an ergonomic self-assessment that people can start with to identify what their setup is like and how it suits their ability to work at home. So we can start with that, but there are avenues to look at individual circumstances. So I'd suggest if the typical way of obtaining equipment isn't working for people, that they go through their workplace leader, and we can deal with their situation individually to look at what their needs are.
Thanks, Barb. Sticking on with an HR question, with a lot of employees, they're feeling stressed. How are we promoting access to counselling through our employee program, Homewood Health?
My understanding is that there is a direct link to that on the website to Homewood, and they have been really good about providing supports and expanding their supports in the current COVID crisis. A lot of the focus is on the difficulties of working remotely, the senses of isolation, the multiple challenges that people are facing. So we're reminding people about that every opportunity we can get. Perhaps we should look at giving it a little higher profile just to make sure that people know that support and connection is available.
Thanks, Barb. Going back to online learning, any thought of a team solely responsible for overseeing, monitoring, coordinating, and streamlining online programming?
I think I'll pass it to Heather for that, but I do want to say that our folks in Settle have just done an unbelievable job. I was talking to a faculty member a couple of weeks ago that kind of told her story about how stressful it was to move 3 courses online, but just how at the end of a phone was an individual that was unbelievably helpful to her as she moved forward. In our meetings with the unions in a weekly basis, one of the issues that was brought up was, can we add more? And so we have, or in the process of, I'm adding another person to the e-learning team. And I just can't say enough about what they've done as a group to support one another and also the college in general. So we do have a team. I'll see if Heather would like to add anything to that, to this answer to that question.
You know, my first reaction to hearing the question was that we have that team. That's the e-learning team in Settle. So I'm actually very interested in the writer of that question, what more they're looking for. So I guess I would bring it back. I invite that person to add a little bit more information because as this becomes a bigger and bigger part of our business, I would say we're very open to the best way to provide support for that work. So give me some detail.
Thanks, Heather. Going back, we're going to have to wrap up shortly, just looking at the time to keep the hour-long commitment. Couple of last questions. Is there a policy in place to ensure our increased diversity?
Rodney? Okay, here we go. Takes a moment to switch the screen. We have, as I explained a few minutes ago, we have policies that some of them are new, some of them are in the process of being developed. And I think that one of the most important policies we developed, and it was with a lot of consultation and endorsement by EDCO and the board, was our equity, diversity, and inclusion policy. It's the overriding policy that other policies will connect to. An example that I gave was looking at accommodations for students with disabilities. We anticipate more policy work being done around that larger policy. Of course, indigenization policy was just passed by the board recently. There is a lot of policy work going on. We have a very small team. A shout out to Rochette and Pete. Their work, along with folks in student experience that are working on specific policies, but it all kind of stems back to our belief system in equity, diversity, and inclusion, and the work that has been done specifically over the last 3 years. With those new policies.
Thank you, Sherry. I think maybe we have enough time to squeeze in one last question, and it's around with all the financial pressures and talk of layoffs, will there be an opportunity for early retirement?
I think I'll pass that one back to Barb to talk a little bit about perhaps some history and some conversations that she's been having around early retirement.
Thank you, Sherry. Early retirement incentives are one of the options that are considered under the labor adjustment strategies, and it is one of the things that we'll be looking at. Of course, the college will be looking at whether or not applications for early retirement will resolve a layoff problem. We'll provide an alternate placement for one of the people whose positions is being eliminated. But I would say that those are among the things. An early retirement incentive plan is one of the things that will be discussed with the unions and considered as we're meeting with the discrete groups of people. So absolutely, we're going to be thinking about it. It's not likely to be on a college-wide basis. We're not looking at the kinds of workforce reductions, I think, that took place probably before my arrival, but targeted, it's very likely to be considered one of the options. Is that enough information? I hope that's enough. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Barb. I do realize that there's an awful lot of questions still coming in, and we had committed to 1 hour because people have made time for this. As I said up front, we will take all the questions that we have unfortunately not been able to answer or address, and we will be creating an FAQ, and we'll be sending out the link through Cam News. But thank you very much to everyone who submitted a question online, and thank you to members of the college executive and for the chair for joining us. And if we did miss a question, like I said, we're going to do our best to follow up. But also remember, you can come back and view this recording. And I'd now like to turn this over to our board chair, Leigh Rouhani, who's just, and then Sherry for some final remarks.
Thanks, Rodney. So thanks to everybody for those insightful and probing questions. I hope that the college executive team has been able to answer some questions, and I did see that there were so many that were submitted in the chat, so hopefully they'll be addressed as well. And unfortunately for me, my time on the board is coming to an end. We do have a new board chair as of August 1st, and that's Monty Bryant. I will certainly miss my time at Camosun. It's been an incredibly rewarding experience. And I'd really just like to especially thank Sherry Bell for her leadership, especially during these last few months, during these unprecedented times. I just want to thank everybody for their unwavering commitment, passion, and support of students. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Leigh, and thank you for your service and contributions to the college over the past 6 years. You will truly be missed. You're a very special woman. Thank you all for joining us today. This is the first time we've tried something like this, and if you like the format, because we can't pull people together, let us know through the chat. We will endeavor to answer all of the questions that have come in. You know, we really didn't know the kinds of questions you have, and what is heartening is that commitment to the broader social goals that we have are still there. You know, there were a lot of questions and worry, of course, about what's happening financially for the institution. There's worry about COVID-19 and where you're going to be working and how you're going to be working. But that was also layered with things that are of great importance to our community, our college, our country. So climate change, Black Lives Matter, anti-racism, and other social issues that are kind of the fabric of what we are about at Camosun are still incredibly important. And we're not losing that over this time. It is a very difficult time because we are talking about financial issues and the potential of layoffs, and that affects people. I hope that you leave today with a little less anxiety, stress. Maybe some questions have been answered. And if you like the format, we can do this again. What feels really odd to me is to say thank you to a little camera at the corner of my screen rather than the beautiful people that we work with every day. I wish you a relaxing time during the summer months. Hopefully, if you are in a position to take some time on weekends or other time to recuperate, rejuvenate, stay healthy, and take care of one another. We appreciate your support and resourcefulness. Just take care of yourselves and your family. Wishing you all the very best. Take care. Thank you so much for joining us.